Hello and welcome to another edition of Choose the Challenge. I'm LaWanna Bradford with the Bradford Group as well as the Bradford Group Consulting, and I am so excited because this month, as you know, is Women's History Month, and we are taking a unique spin in our conversation regarding the accomplishments, celebrations, and contributions of women around the world. We are going arm in arm with our international sisters as we hashtag break the bias. And one of those conversations today has to deal with that conversation we don't really want to have is human trafficking. And I'm so delighted to have the amazing Alexa Oliva with me today. Alexa, how's it going?
It is going fabulous. Today's another beautiful day in Florida.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I want to tell the audience just a little bit about you. Alexa is she's a serial entrepreneur, a brilliant marketing mind. And her company, Boa Studios, is a multifaceted multimedia company. And they work with businesses, entrepreneurs around the world to help with brand positioning and helping individuals to spotlight themselves so that their messages, their position can be heard and acknowledged throughout the world. But what I found very interesting is in addition to all of these amazing things that she's doing, she has a nonprofit called Motivational Missionaries Tour. And MMT has numerous programs under its umbrella. But what caught my attention is they are focused on human trafficking. And I thought, who better to sit down and talk to us about, number one, helping us to understand what it is. How do we recognize it? Who's most at risk? And then all the amazing work that she and this nonprofit organization are doing and how we can be a part of being the change to help not only hashtag break the bias, but break this horrific cycle, what I call it's modern slavery, right?
That's exactly what they call it. It's a
You know,
global
and
epidemic.
with in the past, when we think about the transatlantic slavery was easily recognized. People are bound and shackled; they're branded. It was that acceptable part of commerce, part of economics at the time. But now it's not as easily detected. But it is slavery just the same when anyone whose rights have been stripped and they are forced to do something that is outside of their will. And they have no way of breaking free where now their freedoms have been compromised. It's enslavement. And I know a lot of people don't like using that term, but sometimes I'm like, let's get away with the niceties and call it exactly what it is. Because sometimes when we speak the truth, and we say, a spade is a spade. A rose by any other name, as Shakespeare said, is still a rose. We can call this anything we want. It is still enslavement of people against their will. I think when we start to recognize the truth and the ugliness of it, then we can protect ourselves, we can protect our children, and we can protect the world. So I want to just turn this over to you, Alexa, to educate us on what actually is human trafficking.
Thank you, Luana. Thank you for having me on here. And this is, for me, an honor to be getting the word out there as far as what the fictional things that people think that slavery really is. I mean, you brought up a great point. Back in the 1800s, you could buy a slave for $18,000. And today, the cost of a slave can run you as low as $100. You're like, wow, why? And it's because the easy access that there is to doing it and to hiding it. A hotel room can run you $100, and that's all you really need is to coerce someone by force or by whatever means necessary to get them into a hotel room, and boom, you have your first slave employee, your first money making opportunity. It's because it's that sad. Before, I mean, when you picture a slave, you're picturing someone bound by chains and being whipped and all that stuff that you could see on a what were those things called, those big houses in the South or whatever.
Plantations.
The plantations, exactly. I mean, that's what people, the theory that they have there. But nowadays, the one thing that people don't notice, and it's, when we're having the one-on-one conversations with community leaders and politicians and the average community families, right, is they're like, yeah, but my child is so protected, they're never going to fall into something like that because I'm on top of everything. And that misconception is one that I had very early on when I found out about this. I believe it was 2012, 2013. And it's that community kids can't get involved. And absolutely, community kids can get involved. What do community kids mean? My kids, your kids, the neighbors' kids, suburban kids. How do they get involved? All it takes is social media. We were Valerie, the co-founder of our organization, and myself belonged to the South Florida Human Trafficking Task Force. And there we meet with all types of law enforcement and NGOs, non-government organizations, all kinds of Department of Children and Families, FBI, State Department, you name it. Everybody's in there, right? And so we were meeting with an FBI director one time, and he said that and this was a couple of years ago, 63% of the human trafficking cases are because they were discovered online and coerced one way or another of getting them to meet them somewhere. So that means someone like my daughter, like anyone's daughter out there, can be coerced. Oh my God, you're so beautiful. Oh, you should really be an influencer, because that's the term nowadays, not even model, right? You could be an influencer, but I need to meet you face to face. Do you want to go meet at a Starbucks? That seems harmless, doesn't it? Right. No. And these are the terms. Now, what do they do a lot of times? Oh, what is everybody into nowadays? The young kids, they're taught in all these music videos and movies and everything, big cars, flashy jewelry, pimping clothes, right? Well, guess what? They hire these really, good looking people. Let's say kids, to give an example, a good looking, 20-year-old kid in a fancy car, and they meet you at Starbucks and they treat you and they're like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. And they make them their girlfriend. And the next thing is, baby, if you love me, my friend is willing to give us some money and just let's go to this hotel room. And it's that easy, and you're talking what, 14, 15-year-old girl? That's what's happening in gangs. Let's talk about gangs for a moment. People are like, oh my God, gangs. No, I live somewhere where there's no gangs. They can say, hey, listen, they can literally walk up to your door, knock on the door, and be like, hey, we're going to kill your mother, your father, your dog, your cousin, and your sister, or your best friend, if you don't meet us over here in the corner every day at 5:00. So that's how they get community kids. It's, movie theaters, birthday parties. And why these children? I was like, interested. So we did our homework. Why is it the children from ages 12 to 14 are the primary target for human trafficking? Because they have freedom. Right now, we're letting them go to the t-ball game or the softball game or the volleyball game, or go to the movies or go to the mall or go to a party at their friend's house. And guess what? They have an uncle or they have a big brother, or there's someone eyeballing you in the mall, or you're playing in the park and someone's eyeballing you in the park and they follow you home. And that's all it takes. It's very simple to get someone locked into this. And then once they lock you in by threatening you, coercing you into doing things that you don't want to do. And it's very dangerous. So that's why I like spreading the word, because at the time that we got involved, I had two children between the ages of 12 to 14 at home when Homeland Security, when we met with them the first time. And I was like, what? And Miami's number 3. And that's where I live. That's where I raised my children. And I was like, oh my gosh, who's doing this? Who's doing this? And they're like, anybody could be doing it. Your neighbor could be doing it. And then we saw, I think ABC, I want to say 2020, but we have it in one of our presentations where these girls, they were coerced into a house, in a suburban house, and they were held captive there as slaves to work in New Jersey, in East Orange, New Jersey, where they were braiding hair for 17 hours a day, every day for years. And you're like, what? Yes. Another
let's pause right there, because you just said something. So when we're talking about human trafficking, there's the sex part. Then what you said is the forced labor, which is you're either working for free or very little. And then there's the indentured servitude. right? Where we don't even know
Well,
where these
that
people are.
that kind of there's four areas. So we have the sex trafficking, we have the labor trafficking, we have baby trafficking, and we have organ trafficking. So those are kind of like the four main areas.
Main
And
group.
sometimes, yes, the main areas of human trafficking. But of course, some people are like, well, I have a boy or I'm an adult, and they're looking for the young girls or what. That's a misconception, because labor trafficking can be as much as we need them out for farming, or we need the muscles for something, or a pair of eyeballs are like 17,000. A spleen can run you 30 grand, or a kidney or something like that. For organ trafficking, baby trafficking, I mean, you name it. This is very sick.
You know, when I was doing research a few years ago on it, again, this is about your bias. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So my perception of it was that was other countries, less developed countries. You'd heard about Thailand, you heard about things that were happening in African nations, and I'm like, those are the less developed, and I understand we have to help them. But then when I looked at the CDC report probably about 5 or 6 years ago, the US was in the top four nations of the highest risk. And
Yeah.
I thought, OMG, really? And like you said, who are the community kids? And I want to just share this story, and I want to get back to you and just create helping to expand this awareness. My niece and nephew, they're twins, and they had turned 16 last year. And we had this great party in a hotel. And we're wondering, well, where did the girls go? Well, I look back. This is at night. It's about 9:30 at night, and they're coming back. They said, "Oh, we went and walked at the mall to the mall." We were all like, "Oh my god, you're walking, down this dark corridor to get to the mall instead of us, taking you, or you taking the hotel van." And they're like, "Oh, it's fine. We were with a group." And I thought, no, these little vans can pull up and push you all in. It was just really frightening. But I saw how innocent they were, and they were thinking, well, just because we're together, we're safe. And
Yeah.
that's not necessarily the case, right?
Absolutely not. I have a close personal friend of mine. When she was 17, I want to say 17, probably barely making 18 years old, she went to a party with some girlfriends. It was three girls. And there was some guys at the party, and they're like, hey, let's continue the party. And they went into a hotel room and saw six of them were partying. And the next thing you know, she was involved for a year and a half in an episode of her life where she was enslaved in human trafficking. So, and it could just happen to anyone. If someone puts their gaze on you, there's really nothing you can do to stop it. As far as there's precautions that we can take not to get ourselves involved in that, and those are the indicators and the things that I love to let people know about. And we'll be talking about those towards the end. I'll give exactly where you can lean in for help, because there are channels where you can get help nowadays. Back when I started this in 2012, 2013 with my team, it wasn't readily available, but nowadays there are. And I'm so happy that, Val and I got involved with the Human Trafficking Task Force here in South Florida, because it's made an impact in many lives. And we just need to keep spreading the word, because a lot of people are like, yeah, I've heard of it. But just like you said earlier, you don't think it's happening here. You think it's other countries. You think it's other people. And that's exactly how I got involved. I was in the border. I was in Belize with my husband, Bradford Oliva, and he was doing a conference because he's an international speaker. And we were on the road in between the border of Belize and Guatemala. And there was a billboard that said, be careful with human traffickers across the borders. We were like, oh my gosh, these people got a problem. And then we got to the hotel room at the conference center, and there was a commercial on television that said, careful with human traffickers. And I was like, oh my gosh, these people really have a problem. Like, what's going on here, And then Val and I were on the board of the Miami Beach Chamber of Commerce that year that we came back. And that's when Homeland Security came and gave a presentation, and they told us that Miami was number 3, and children between the ages of 12 to 14 were the primary target audience. And I was like, oh, I live there, here, and I have 2 of those that age at home. And I was like, wow, I felt like such a dumb American at that moment, thinking that was their problem when, wow, the problem was right where I was standing, and I couldn't believe it. And so that's when Val and I looked at each other and we're like, you know what, we need to get involved however we can. And we went up to Agent Williams that year and we're like, how can we help? What can we do? And he says, if you're serious about this, there is no funding for teenagers to spread the awareness at the moment. And I said, well, what can we do? So we started reaching out to politicians and NGOs and everybody that we could, and private funding. And that's where we started our tours and, spreading the message of some of these social issues and injustices that are happening in our world today.
Are you involved also with the school systems and going into to help educate, the educators as well as the children?
We do. Unfortunately, because of this horrible COVID epidemic, it has changed the landscape for us temporarily. We are excited when things kind of go still back to normal, because, assemblies and things like that still haven't really started back up. Now is when, the mask mandates and the social separation and all those things are almost auto-correcting, but they're still quite not there. And so that's kind of like at the bottom of the totem pole, when you have assemblies and stuff. So, what we're doing is through the virtual platforms, trying to keep the message going.
I love that. To our listening audience, you're joining us with the amazing Alexa Oliva as we talk about a very delicate topic, human trafficking, in essence, modern slavery. And she's going to go into a little bit deeper so that we can become more aware and notice or recognize those indicators that can place ourselves or our children at greater risk. So I want to ask you, what, as you mentioned, there's not a lot of funding for this, even though we know it's a critical concern. And why is it, and this may sound like a silly question to you, but I am very curious, around major events, so Super Bowl, for example, they said that's a high risk time for trafficking. Because I know when I landed in Atlanta last year, there was a big billboard, Mayday, warning, warning. Why is it? What's going on in the major events that makes it easier for the traffickers?
Oh gosh. Well, unfortunately, what happens in these sporting events, as we know, they're mostly male focused, right? Like men gather to more likely to the football games and the baseball games and the sporting and the basketball and all these things, right? And so what happens is where there's men, there are needs. And so these traffickers, they understand that if there's men and there's needs, then obviously there's a market for, the sex trafficking. And so, that's why the numbers go up in whatever city whenever there's a sporting game. So there are task force, trying to get there. And, just a couple of years ago, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, the Super Bowl was actually here in Miami. And we had that day of Super Bowl, 17 arrests for human trafficking. The problem is that the traffickers know that uh, um, prosecuting sorry, that was the word I was looking for. They know that prosecuting for this particular crime is very difficult. Everything's got to be there, on top of the fact that the victims themselves don't want to relive that. They don't want to face those abusers again. And so it's very hard to get them into court and to admit these things. And they know that. And that's why it's so dangerous, because the percentage of prosecution with that is very low, unfortunately. Increasing, thank goodness, increasing, but not necessarily where we need it to be nowadays to keep our communities and our children safe.
Now you mentioned that the 2 to 14-year-olds are like the prime target, and you mentioned it's
Yes.
because of their freedoms. I guess the freedoms that we as parents, as caregivers, are giving them. Is that what you were referring to?
Yes, I mean, when they're 12 to 14 years old, they think they're adults, right? What 12 to 14-year-old have you met that says, "Don't treat me like a child. I'm a man or I'm a woman now. I'm menstruating and things are happening in my body, so I am an adult." And unfortunately, this is not an adult as much as they think it is. And so, but in the rite of passage, we allow them a little bit more freedom with their friends. "Oh, mom, can I sleep over Samantha's house tonight?" And you're like, "Oh, okay, Samantha's mom's going to be there." I mean, there's only so much that you can do without invading someone and kind of like, planting a camera or something, in someone else's house to know that your child is safe. And they get creative around these things. You know what? I'll leave my cell phone on top of Samantha's desk, and then we'll go out with her phone, and my mom can track me and see that I'm there at her house the entire time. And so, I know some of these tricks, right? And so, with my children, I was like, FaceTime me. I need to see you. I need to talk to you. I need to know exactly where you're at. I'm tracking you. I'm tracking your cars. I'm tracking your cell phones. And we put a lot of safety precautions into our family and explained it to our children. Number one, I mean, what our nonprofit is about. And they have participated in some of the awareness campaigns and assemblies and events that we've had around the world. So they tell some of their stories and the things that they've gone through. But it's important to have that communication with your children, even though it's very difficult, right? And so we know that having that one-on-one communication with your child, they're like, "It's mom, it's dad, it's grandma, it's my aunt, whatever." But when you come out and you hear someone else tell it to them in a format that opens their minds and their hearts with interaction, with games. That's why we use Bert, my husband. He's an international speaker, and he has this way about telling stories and connecting with people. And children absolutely love him because he plays games and interacts with them and shows them a video and just this amazing way of connecting with them. And then that opens it up, which we know that music and all those things make it fun because we talk to them in their language. And so we open up their minds and their hearts, so then we can feed them the precautionary, the indicators, and kind of raise their spidey flags, their Spider-Man, spidey flags, what
Spidey
we call it.
senses.
Yeah, their spidey senses, so that they're like, "Oh, they trigger, like there's a hesitation. Oh, I just saw something that I shouldn't have, or I saw something that I got to report." That's why they have the "See Something, Say Something" campaign by the law enforcement. And so those are the things that we're trying to do. We can't necessarily save anyone, but we can make you more aware so that you don't fall into that. And some of the things that we do teach in our organization to not fall into that is by empowering them and making them more self-confident. Because the more self-confident you are, the less you are prey for the predators, because they're looking for the broken down, kind of shy, withdrawn child that's not too social, that hasn't too many connections, that you can see that they're struggling. So if we empower them and put their heads up and make them strong and let them know where they can get help and let them know that we're paying attention and they're not forgotten and they know where to get help, that hopefully that's what can make the difference in saving more lives. We may not save everyone, but boy, if we can save a couple thousand or a couple 100,000 from these crazy numbers out there around the world, then we're making an impact together as communities around the world.
Yeah, I totally agree. I always tell people, um, don't ever think that you can't make a difference. It's about making a ripple. And if you're able to change one life, you've changed a generation, right? You've given them hope. Now they are passing on in confidence and in boldness that message for their children. How to stand, how to protect, how to be aware. I remember when I was growing up, my dad used to always challenge me. He's retired military. He said, "You need to know your surroundings. You bebop around, like there's just tulips everywhere." He's like, "I need you to focus." And as I got older, I started to get it. But he's right. I guess, oblivious into the threats that could have been around me, right? Because you're just a kid, and I think it's unfortunate that we do have to have those conversations with our children. And with this conversation, Human trafficking isn't a respecter of persons. It doesn't matter what your economic status is, your race, your gender, your religious backgrounds. It can attack anyone, right?
Anyone, anywhere, at any moment. It's it's incredible. I remember a couple of years ago, we were actually in Nashville at a conference in Nashville, and we got a phone call from a mutual friend of ours, Nancy Matthews, and we had done a presentation on motivational missions and the prevention of human trafficking, and she gave us a call and told us that there were four girls in a gas station in Central Florida that just ran away from their predator or their captor, and they needed saving. And because Val and I had contact with all the law enforcement and everything, it was like a Sunday at 11:30 at night, we were able to communicate and get those girls rescued in Central Florida. So we made a difference to those four girls, and there have been other stories of success stories of prevention or saving or survival from the different things that the organization has done. So, when you think, we're not going to make a difference, are we really making a difference? I guess we did to those four girls, right? And
Oh,
it was a team
definitely.
effort. It was a team effort, and that's what people need to understand, that yeah, it's maybe not one person, it's a community. And that's why we love going out and speaking not only to the children, but before that we speak to the teachers and the parents that are willing to listen, and the community leaders. And a lot of times when we go out to the different countries, it's a lot easier than in the States, because we have to go state to state, or uh, the Department of Education doesn't have like a an umbrella over the whole Department of Education in the country. So you have to literally go take the small steps. But when we go to other countries, they have the ministries of education that have direct contact with their schools. And so those
Mhm.
have been a little easier for us to do a lot more children in other countries. Not that we don't want to do it here in the States. I mean, this is where I'm from, born, raised, and educated. So I need to bring the team in, and people like you, LaWanna, to help us spread that message and get that message and cast that net as wide as we can, so that we can save as many families as we can
I
from
love
getting
it.
hurt.
Oh, Alexa, can you believe we're almost out of time? And I want to take myself down and give you time to um, give us more golden nuggets that we can take and actually implement, and also let individuals know how they can be involved with you, whether it's their time, their resources, or their talents. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, LaWanna. Um, so, human trafficking and all these social issues and injustices that are happening to our communities around the world, like LaWanna said, are not by any race, religion, color, sex. It does not matter. Everyone is prone to this. And so there are things that you can do to kind of open up, like we were talking about the spidey senses, right? And so what you can there are sometimes you might see something like a branded tattoo that they put inside the lip, or on the eyelid, or behind the head, or in places they're like bar scan codes, or significant tattoos, things like that. Or if you see that someone's kind of totally withdrawn, or they're always you're seeing people with like a 12-year-old cannot afford Prada bags and Chanel glasses, and just unusual things that that a 12-year-old shouldn't have, possibly in your community, right? Like, it's odd. Those are kind of signs that something is weird, and so that you should keep an eye on that, right? And so there's also um behavior, medical, bruising. If you see bruising, things like that, these are some indicators that there might be something wrong. Someone that doesn't control their passport, or is in a rush, or you're noticing that they're always looking around, and they're kind of like not engaged in what's happening, or totally withdrawn. These are some of the indicators of someone that might be caught up in something that they shouldn't be, right? Or something that they don't want to be. And so what can you do? Well, you can reach out privately, because sometimes there are cell phones and text messaging that's a lot quieter than getting a phone, right? So you can text to Be Free. That's 23733. And that goes out to an organization called Polaris that has direct contact with the different law enforcements throughout our country. And so they are the ones that send out those messages to the local law enforcement to vet, to see if this is a viable threat or not. And so you can quietly text that. A lot of times also, there are certain restaurants that in the women's bathrooms that they're putting up signs that you can do a certain sign to your waitress or order a certain drink, to let them know that you need help, and to be very discreet about it. And so there are things, more and more things that are coming up that you can actually reach out. Our organization, we have an online form that you can fill out. If you see any suspicious activity that you want to report, and then we'll get it to the correct law enforcement as well. And we have some tips and stuff at our website at motivationalmissions.org that you can also reach out to us if you need help, if you want to contact us to come out to your community or to your school. We're always available, always willing, and always have our hearts open to seeing who we can help save from this atrocious monstrosity that is not just at a local level, it's in our nation and it's all over the world, unfortunately. And so, we ask that you communicate with us and that you reach out to us and understand that there are people out there that want to help, that have the need to help, that have the passion to help our children, our youth, our families, our communities out there. We're asking you to reach out to us. And, every little bit helps, from visiting our social media on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchats, where, our website, everywhere. You can request us to come into your school or community. And one of us will be more than glad to work out the logistics for that. You can go onto our website also and make any donation, or just forward the information to your friends and family. That information, we also have a free giveaway of social media websites that children might be visiting, or that people can be visiting, that attract these predators. And so we have that also downloadable on our website as well. Or if you contact us, we'll be more than happy to give it to you. So anyway, my name is Alexa Oliva. I am one of the founders of motivationalmissions.org. And you know what? You can be a hero in your own life, but also a hero of your community. So thank you, LaWanna.
Thank you so much. I also want to put some more information here, including your 233-733 number, texting Be Free to that. Also, if you want to reach out to the national organization with ICE, as whether you're a victim or you've noticing suspicious activity, please use these resources. And I encourage you, this was just a small 30-minute chit chat with Alexa. But if you want to know more, you want to do more, please reach out to Motivational Missions and find out how you can be a part of the solution for change. I believe that the more we're educated, the more we're aware, we can truly make a difference. Right, Alexa?
Absolutely. Amen.
And I know you have another, you're kind of doing a national road show on Ladies First Radio coming up, and you'll have a conversation about this very topic again. Yes?
As many times and anywhere that anyone wants to invite me to get this information out, I am there. We will find a space in my calendar to make sure that this message is spread always and everywhere. So, yes.
Thank you so much for being a part of our Choose to Challenge platform, where Choose to Challenge is designed to help you challenge systems, norms, your mental blocks, your biases, the systemic institutions, all the isms that we're trying to get rid of. That's what this platform is about. It's about daring to push the envelope, daring to be an instrument of change, daring to use your gifts, talents, and passions to create the world that we want to be, a world that's safe for all humanity, because I believe that everyone deserves to live a life full of love, full of peace, and full of harmony. Yes?
Absolutely. that energy that you bring, that passion and that heart that you have, LaWanna, is so unique. And I just wish so many more people could listen to you, experience you, and get to listen, just like, I don't know, hug you. Because you're amazing, and I love your energy, and I am so blessed to have you in my life.
Thank you so much. And before we go, I want to play one little video, and then I'm going to let you give the closing words. Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Okay.
We will win, we will win in the end. We will win in the end. We can lose, we can lose. We can lose if we choose. We will win.
All right. Well, Alexa, I'll let you close us out.
All right. For those of you that are out there and not quite sure if your question is one that needs to be asked, am I involved in this? Did I just see what I saw? Does that person need help, or do I need help? We just want you to know that you're not alone. And what is that alone thing? What does that exactly mean? Well, that means that other people are willing to listen to you. Even if you feel like someone and the closest people to you are not really listening to you, there's always people out there that need to hear your message and see if there's something that they can do for you, because you are the hero in your own life. You need to make that difference in your own life by saying something. If you see something, it's important, and we're here to listen to you. My name is Alexa Oliva from Motivational Missions, and remember, you can be a hero in your own life. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And we will see you next week on another edition of Choose to Challenge. Be safe.